A very good afternoon. This is Harsh Tukral from National Productivity Council. Um, Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for joining. I would like to thank all the participants to the webinar who have registered today. Uh, this topic on industrial cluster rating, ranking, and benchmarking, a methodology in perspective, is a work in progress idea that we are striving to bring forth for consideration by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, where we would like to participate in the initiative on industrial park rating scheme that was launched in 2018 by the Ministry. I would like to highlight some of the indicators we've developed, a little backdrop on what we were striving for and how we would like to move forward and seek suggestions and inputs from the participants and from the various stakeholders in the industrial system. So I would like to move forward. My colleagues, Mr. K.D. Bhardwaj, Dr. K.P. Sani, and Sri Sunil Kumar are also joining in for sharing insights on this particular project idea that we have. So let me begin. We in India are looking for strengthening our manufacturing contribution to the GDP to cross 25% or so by the 2022 year. And India also seeks to create over 100 million jobs during the intervening period. And to achieve these goals, India mainly needs to, in a way, attract foreign direct investment, pursue industrial infrastructure development, enable startups and enterprise establishment, enhance skills development, enable ease of doing business. Another important indicator, an index that has been developed by the World Bank, and enhance competitiveness of enterprises. So there is a lot that is being striven for in our country towards the idea of enhancing competitiveness and advantage from the industrial manufacturing system. And in this context, there are competitiveness studies or analysis also from the internationally, like the Global Competitiveness Index and the EODB, and then there has been an initiative in India also. So I'll touch upon a few of these as I move forward to share some of the indicators we have thought of as potential to be included in the nature of indicators that exist. In the past, there was a trend, say from the 1950s to 2010, when our industrial sector GDP had started to rise beyond around 1995 onwards to cross the agricultural contribution to the national GDP. However, services sector in India has been a major contributor to our national GDP, which rose to almost 59% by 2015, and then after around 2015 onwards, we have been striving to enhance our industry manufacturing sector contribution to GDP. Then there is this element of foreign direct investment. This has fluctuated $4 billion to $44 billion. It almost remained the same between 2015 to 16. And then 2016 to 17, again, it actually declined. There has been further improvement on this, and we believe that the process of the various ratings and rankings that have been initiated will help FDI to enhance and improve in India, which is likely to be strengthened as EODB performance of India is improving, and we can have our own Indian indicator systems to analyze the dynamics in the industrial sector. So for cluster rating and ranking, we need to focus on the nature or types of industrial clusters, the significance, why do we need to rate these, uh, rating approach, a brief on the methodology that we are actually building at this stage. Quickly, if I can touch upon, industrial clusters can be defined as sectoral and spatial concentration of enterprises, having a definite kind of dynamism in production organization. There are organizational synergies and interdependence of firms. Uh, Michael Porter in 2003 defined clusters as geographically close groups of interconnected companies and associated institutions in a particular field and linked by common technologies and skills. One of the popular industrial cluster that has been studied a lot is the Silicon Valley cluster. Then you have Marshallian clusters, which are locally owned, small and medium enterprises concentrated in craft-based, high technology or producer services industries. You have which are dominated by one or several large firms surrounded by smaller uh, suppliers. Uh, you have satellite platforms also were dominated by branch facilities of externally based multi-plant firms. In these systems, you also have international trade happening by the conglomerates amongst their business enterprises as well. State-anchored industry clusters, the public sector units or non-profit entities lead the system there and establish a cluster, and the supplier and service sectors develop around these. In India, we also have initiated work on what is called the National Investment and Manufacturing Zones. Uh, these are combination of production units, public utilities, logistics, residential areas, a whole lot of combination of these features brought together in these zones. Special economic zones, delineated enclaves treated as foreign territory in a way where you have more liberal regime for levies and foreign investment support. Sector-specific parks, we have mega leather clusters that are being developed, food parks, electronic goods manufacturing, even plastics recycling industrial clusters are being proposed or developed. So in addition, you have the industrial corridors, Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, and country-specific zones, like specific for a country like the Neemrana Japanese zone where we are. So there are subtle variations in clusters, as well as there are commonalities that are visible. A taxonomy of clusters I can highlight here is where you have producer-driven to buyer-driven feature on the one end, and you have a diversified or subcontractor type cluster, 2x2 matrix. So you have, traditionally, we've seen a lot of artisanal industrial districts or clusters. This is an international system and assessment of clusters in Italy, Silicon Valley, and Korea. So they have highlighted these nature of clusters also, disaggregated production networks, large firm base. So there's a lot of analysis on the taxonomy itself of clusters over the years. Industrial clusters in India, almost 4,259 clusters were looked into, diagnostics done in the past in around 2010, and efforts are ongoing to further generate insights. Even the Foundation of Small and Medium Enterprises has a diagnostic tool which has given insights on the cluster system. The need for cluster analysis, as started with, we have a need to explore the competitiveness drivers and to develop avenues to strengthen those. And Successful implementation of national visions and missions like Make in India movement can be provided insights through the cluster analysis and rating system. And then this can help in information dissemination and to attract investment. So these are some of the, and it's an opportunity to study the dynamics of industrial clusters today. In addition, there's another feature that we can do is go for mapping of technology. We could look at products, design and innovation characteristics, and for example, can we quickly make new medicines and vaccines? Can we substitute plastics with alternatives? Self-driven cars, drones for different applications. So are we ready? How fast are we moving? So mapping of technology, and then the concentration and diffusion of the technology that is occurring in our country. Process aspects, the value of investments of these technologies in terms of the size and scale. Patents, how many patents we are generating in our clusters. Then age and trends focused with linkages and scientific developments. How old is our cluster? How new? Or what are the new enterprises? Let's say 5-year-old, 7-year-old, how initiatives of the enterprises that are occurring, and productivity focused resource efficiencies. In this regard, clean technology adoption, and there are also the eco-industrial parks being popularized or being achieved and being sought to be achieved in various clusters, where the resources, the waste of one company becomes a resource for another, and there's an ecosystem developed around that. And Kalundborg was another example in Denmark, which was popularly assessed for eco-industrial parks. So in this way, you could look at the need for cluster rating, forward-backward linkages, the labor intensity. So there's a whole lot of aspects which also link to the technology aspects in these clusters. And today we are also talking about data analytics, Internet of Things related involvement, Industry 4.0 efforts. And so the machinery that is ready to upgrade and these new technologies to be brought in. Let's have a quick look at some of the international competitiveness indices. India happened to have actually slipped 10 places in the global competitiveness index. And there is a method there where they score and rank a country on competitiveness aspects. And GCI has about 12 pillars, which includes infrastructure, institutions, macroeconomic environment, higher education and training, goods market efficiency. So it's a complex system, set of indicators which are analyzed. And currently in 2019, Singapore has come at the top rank, and United States second, etc. So Denmark is at 10. So these are the scores on the basis of which these rankings are done. Another indicator or insight that we get is from the ease of doing business indicators. Here, also, if you see, there are a number of themes or topics: contracting with the government, getting electricity, dealing with construction permits, trading across. So these are framework domains which are taken up. And since 2005 till 2020, a whole lot of countries have joined this process, and which started with 145 economies in 2005, and it's reached 190 plus now for this particular thing. Economies with given number of respondents. Now, ease of doing business involves more than 15,000 respondents to give insights on a series of themes that have been just mentioned, indicator sets. And there are questionnaires which are responded to, and then they are analyzed, verified, secondary data, primary data. There are several advantages that have been highlighted. For example, registering property for a business. You have, on the one hand, what are the aspects to be dealt with during pre-registration, registration, post-registration, over the time and amount of time that it takes, and the cost or percentage of property value that comes in. So in a way, there are certain inbuilt deep analytical components and methodological structure with which the EODB has been worked on. Some of the advantages being indicated are: it is transparent, has factual information about what laws and regulations say, and allowing multiple interactions. The methodology is said to be easily replicable, so data can be collected in a large sample of economies. The data not only highlights the extent of specific regulatory obstacles, but also identify the source and point to what might be reformed. So like that, there are certain advantages of the EODB methodology. The process requires, so for rating and ranking industrial clusters that we are seeking to undertake for our country, and interested industrial clusters, we could potentially start with or think of 50 to 100 clusters to participate, and then scale it up in course of time. The process requires the following steps: development of suitable indicators. We are at that stage currently in a team that is trying to build these. The basis of assessments and developing scoring and ranking system, we are trying to connect to the assumptions that could go. I shall highlight some of these points further ahead in this presentation. Constructing the data generation, capture, collation, and analysis system in course of time. Then seeking and selecting cluster respondents. We might need field investigators for field data collection. Engaging in data assessment and analysis, the rating and ranking process, and then going forward to presenting the analytical insights in course of time. To be able to do this, apart from being in the field on the ground, there are certain tools and techniques which we could think of or consider, like crowdsourcing of information on clusters, real-time simple reporting insights, participatory statistics, micro narratives from the field. A mobile app could be thought of, and intelligent infrastructure, the Industry 4.0 initiative, that Center of Excellence has also been created, and we could work on utilizing that initiative. Remote sensing, data visualization, the graphics that you could create from the data that comes in, etc. So I elaborated a little on this. This presentation can be shared, and we could look at this material on what are the features of these tools and techniques. I think I should move forward on this aspect. Now, in 2018, our Ministry of Commerce and Industry, the Department of Promotion of Internal Trade and Industry, Ministry of Commerce, had come up with the Industrial Park Rating Scheme, and which has been a very important initiative. There were more than 3,000 industrial clusters which had been mapped, and about 177 parks, industrial parks, had been analyzed for a set of criteria that were developed. Let me just quickly run through what was the effort made, what were the aspects of this. The idea was to provide information to tenants in the industrial parks and compare parks on identified parameters, include in the rating framework qualitative assessment of industrial parks, as well recognizing the best practices and promote competitive spirit, seek constructive feedback from the park users and from the state industrial development corporations and park developers, identify gaps in the industrial infrastructure. I would like to mention that one of the projects of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry has been about what is called the Modified Industrial Infrastructure Upgradation Scheme, where grants are made partly by the central government, and the state government participates and facilitates a variety of infrastructure, technical, social, um, physical infrastructure aspects, and benchmark this performance and seek improvement of public-private partnership investments. So these steps were taken, and the overall framework of the industrial park rating scheme, which has been a pilot in 2018, has been involving the four major pillars: the investors, the government, economic enablers, administrative enablers, uh, focusing on manufacturing competitiveness, and to um, address insights from the demand conditions, factor conditions, context for firm strategy, and well-developed institutional support. So the idea was to focus on productivity, explore agility of the industry and the responsiveness, enable policy and investor decision-making efforts. Now, the building blocks have been references to the physical infrastructure, ease of doing business, the idea of sector-specific schemes. So various initiatives that have been occurring were also reflected upon. Industrial information system dashboard in a way reflects the the land that industrial land that has been mapped by the initiative parallelly, and about 3,375 industrial clusters got mapped from 31 states and or union territories, and total area mapped 475,000 hectares. Uh, the conceptual framework has been about industries and investors, DPIIT and knowledge partners, and state government interactions taking place, and internal infrastructure and facilities analyzed, external infrastructure and connectivity looked into, business support services and environmental management themes. So this is how the IPRS pilot scale took off. And in future also, there is likely to be further versions and new indicators to be brought into this system. Key features: 177 industrial parks across 21 states were analyzed, and overall response rate from the industrial parks has been good. About 84% of the the industrial parks responded significantly to many of the questions which were formulated. There were 34 primary questions and 27 supplementary questions which were taken up at this stage for evaluation and cluster response. Just a brief on what occurred here. The parks that responded varied from 84% to 94%, 78%, and percentage of questions also. So more than 25% of the questionnaire, all 100% parks, 177 parks had responded to. There were certain elements, for example, that I thought I'll highlight. This is a set of insights from an ADB brief and the work done by the ministry. For example, industrial parks analyzed 177, pipe water supply available in 136 of these parks, operational street lighting 122 of the parks, uninterrupted power supply in 140 parks. However, the areas which came out to be of concern, or areas which needed further attention, common effluent treatment plant facilities were needed to be improved, which was at the 27 parks had indicated that these were good. Sewage treatment plant, about 24 parks indicated were good. Water treatment plant needed, 59 of the 177 indicated was good. So there is scope for these kinds of infrastructure needing attention. And the parameters, as indicated in the graph, uninterrupted electricity, information technology, sewage treatment plant, etc. Paved roads, covered stormwater drainage. So a lot of internal infrastructure components. Then there was external infrastructure and connectivity aspects, which was also analyzed. For example, power substation, bus stop near the park, logistic terminal and its vicinity to the park, solid waste disposal facilities in the vicinity of the park. Here again, there was noticeable gaps in terms of logistic terminals and its vicinity and solid waste disposal aspects of the clusters of the industrial parks. So these were some of the parameters. The highlights that were indicated in the ebook, which is online of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, is that most of the industrial parks located strategically and more than 50% close to major cities, airports and railheads. So the access to the airport and railheads was good for more than 50% of the industrial parks. 68% of the parks have access to public transport for the employees. And however, low focus on solid waste management was noted. Number of parks with availability of business services, another feature that strengthens competitiveness for industrial parks and clusters. Here it was noted that dormitories, truck parking zones, skill development centers needed attention. So in a way, the IPRS has given a lot of insights to the Ministry of Commerce and Industry towards identifying areas where the encouragement for industrial parks could be facilitated, guided, etc. So I would like to indicate that this particular effort is now being taken forward. The best performers in 2018, for example, under Pillar 1, Internal Infrastructure, IMT Manesar from Haryana, then APSEZ Achutapuram, Andhra Pradesh, and Talegaon Industrial Area in Pune. Under the External Infrastructure and Connectivity, Hebbal Industrial Area in Karnataka, SIPCOT in Thoothukudi in Tamil Nadu, and Welspun Anjar SEZ in Gujarat. Business support services. So the Pillar 4 Environment and Safety, Autonagar and Apparel Park in Andhra Pradesh. It has been recognized that there are a lot of good efforts happening in the industrial parks and there is scope for improvement. And it has been indicated that there is a plan to widen the coverage of the industrial park rating scheme across all the states and union territories and central departments and ministries, update the IPRS framework further, and go deeper into qualitative assessments, bring in technological intervention to promote the IPRS, integrate with state level information systems, implement tools, emerge as a tool for promoting brand India, supporting various national and state initiatives. So this insight has helped us look at what from NPC also we can try and contribute. And we started looking at the potential cluster rating ranking scope of work for us, which we hope can be seen as a possibility to for us to be associated. Identifying core parameters and indicators. So we started looking at potential additional parameters and indicators, developing a matrix with both quantitative data inputs to be brought in, as well as qualitative insights to be collected from the field, constructing the data collection and collation mechanism, So the scope of work we are trying to highlight indicates a range of activities ahead, inviting participation in the rating system. In this respect, phase-wise implementation we would like to take up from our end, and disseminating the rating output once the insights are brought and data is analyzed, providing structured data to the policymakers, and then in future further upgrading the rating system and to focus on sustainability database aspects. Now, in what we have identified are about 9 framework parameters for the rating system we would like to participate in or propose or engage in. One, as I mentioned, was about the nature of clusters and then its features. Entrepreneurship features, which includes quantitative insights as well as qualitative perspectives. Uh, as the IPRS addressed access to resources, there are more aspects that can be further looked into. Then the technology and innovation scenario in the clusters, infrastructure aspects. Further, we could look more a deeper insight on this. Human capital availability, social capital elements in the clusters, business focus and firm level drivers, institutional environment, cluster park management elements, etc. So amongst these 9 framework broad parameters, then we are developing sub indicators and sub parameters. So a glimpse of what we are striving for and how these could be potentially assessed or analyzed is what I would like to further highlight. Uh, and the matrix elements, as I mentioned in this slide, we would like to have these are at this stage as a proposal element. These are evolving, and these will need to be reviewed and refined and added to, and some may need to be also excluded. So it's a team which is striving to identify potential indicators. So that's how. And then for these indicators, weightages or credits have to be allocated so that rating system can be evolved. What we believe one of the approaches for rating could be the traditional approach in colleges, for example, the grade point average system, the cumulative grade point system. So we could think of that as a method for scoring and then ranking and then rating the clusters in a way. Let me just touch upon some of the parameters. While I mentioned about cluster stages and taxonomy, we are thinking of putting across scores from 1 to 4. Higher the score, better is the cluster scenario, is what we would like to structure it in a way. Now, if we see, for example, the third serial number, age of firms, there is a assumption, of course, that young firms with an age established within the last 7 years uh, can bring in a lot of dynamism. So we would like to see how many young firms are there in the clusters. So if there are more than 25%, for example, these are indicative and being proposed as an idea, which can evolve and change. Then we could give a score of 4. If the young enterprises are between 15 to 25, 24.99% in the cluster, we could give a score of 3. So like that. And if young enterprises are less than 5%, we could potentially think that we need to strengthen this aspect. And at this point of time, we could give a score of 1. Cluster land productivity, for example, another feature which could be evaluated as gross turnover of all enterprises per square kilometer for say 2019 and 20. So this could be done on a percentile system. So responses that could come in, uh, we could uh, we could give the value of the cluster land productivity in terms of gross turnover of all enterprises. And then from there, the top 25% on this value-based ranking could be given a score of 4. Uh, Greater than 50% to 75% of the value-based ranking could be given a score of 3. So like that. Further, fixed capital formation in cluster investments in plant and machinery, say in past 5 years, since 2015, we could give a value. For example, if there is greater than 500 crores of investment, fixed capital formation, we could think of giving a score of 4. If it is 250 to 499 crores, score of 3. If the overall, in this particular indicator, if it's less than 100 crores, you could think of score of 1. However, these are possible to change. We are still not finalized. It's being worked upon. Stage model, land rates, another element, another potential indicator. Land rates for industrial plots could be also brought into the scoring matrix. Then regarding entrepreneurship, the framework parameter 2, some of the indicators we've thought of. For example, entrepreneurial mix. In a way, how many enterprises have been established by entrepreneurs from outside the cluster, from not local, but from other states or even from foreign countries. So if there are more than 30% of the enterprises in a cluster of from outside the state, we could think of a score of 4 like that. So a score of 1 if it is 4.99% or lesser. Gender mix, the feature, we would like to see how the enterprises are being established and the entrepreneurs coming in from the gender perspective. International investment. So FDI was an element that we mentioned at the beginning of this discussion. So how's the scenario in terms of the cluster? So here again, a percentile ranking arrangement, so value-based ranking for the responding clusters. The top 25% in the value of FDI achieved over the last 5 years could be given a score of 4, score of 3 for the second quarter of the value-based ranking, like that. So then aspects of exports earning or number of countries on the export map of the cluster. If the product range and products from the cluster are reaching to more than 30 countries, we could think of a score of 4. If it is between 20 to 30, you could think of a score of 3. So this could be another potential indicator for consideration. Locational features, just like the IPRS, we were thinking of certain numbers which could probably be thought of. Total land area of cluster. So if it is more than 2,000 acres of land, the possibility of more enterprises likely to be able to get established or located there exists. So the score of 4, large clusters. And if clusters are, so this, the size of the cluster in terms of the acreage. Access to airport, as also indicated in the IPRS, we would like to give a score that the closer the airport, the stronger the possibilities of competitiveness and trade facilitation. To seaport, availability of plots, like that. So distance to A-class cities, so access to dense markets and to availability of skilled trained manpower. So what we would like to say is that at this point of time, we are looking at these possibilities for enabling the rating process. Technology and innovation scenario. awards or citations, for example, that have been achieved in the industrial cluster units. If they are more than 50, for example, we could think of a score of 4. Product patents. So this is another feature that is looked at from the analysis from innovations that occur. So if patents are registered significantly from a cluster, we could give a score of 4. Then expenditure on research and development. So it's like a combination of quantitative inputs that we could receive from the cluster management as well as firms giving inputs in this regard from the clusters. Further infrastructure aspects, energy, the quantum of energy consumption in a way. So here again, percentile ranking basis could be indicator or actual values of the quantum of the energy consumption could be thought of for scoring here. Social infrastructure, logistics, road density. In terms of logistics, again, the interest number of logistic companies established or facilitating or serving the cluster, that could be thought of in the scoring. The road density within the cluster uh, in terms of kilometers of roads within the cluster boundary, things like that. Employment aspects, growth rate in employment over the last 3 years, for example, if it is high, you could think of a higher score. Employment density is another feature which could be thought of as part of the scoring process. Turnover. So here, another thing is how the wage earning system, turnover per, per employee in a way could also be thought of as one of the indicators. Number of industrial training institutes and other vocational training colleges, institutes in the cluster, serving the cluster. These could be taken up for enabling the scoring process. So, and then social aspects and health services, corporate social responsibility initiatives. So like that, we have been brainstorming, thinking of what could be the potential kinds of, elements, both from a quantitative and qualitative angle. For example, even system certifications that are achieved in terms of the MSME enterprises and the proactivity and sustainability orientation that has occurred, so 9,000, 14,000, 26,000 certifications in terms of the quantum, and then looking at that aspect. This is a heavy slide. Environmental compliance issues also could be looked into for grading or scoring clusters. So what is being thought of is bringing out certain indicators right now for deliberations to be able to further refine and improve and then take up for potential consideration and to take up for the cluster rating process. So even participation in national and state level schemes by the micro, small and medium enterprises in the cluster, if that is substantive, it could be a very proactive insight from the cluster. And so that is also being considered for scoring. Maintenance of infrastructure as a qualitative angle, if it's very, very good, it is utilized well. So that could get a score of 4. And satisfactory could get a score of 2. Involvement of top management of the enterprises in the cluster management processes and enabling the overall cluster evolution. So all that is how we looked at the potential range of indicators. So the activities we are envisaging ahead, constitution and a meeting of a technical assessment committee, which could help us evolve, assess the nature of indicators we are thinking of, enabling the development of rating and ranking plan, finalization of the rating and ranking metrics. Once all that is achieved and we reach that stage, then advertising, maybe the, the project idea, development of then the detailed database development, field work, uh, the IT infrastructure to be put in place for insights to be brought in. So it's a work in progress idea, and we look forward to suggestions and ideas from various stakeholders how we can take this forward as a system, and we would look forward to guidance from the ministry, and from NPC we would like to be involved, take it up as a project and contribute to the IPRS or a parallel cluster analysis and rating arrangement. So these are some of the perspectives that we thought we would like to share. So suggestions and insights from the stakeholders would be grateful for us to further involve forward in this particular project idea.